Hey everyone, it's Shaylin, and today we're going to be talking about how to choose a title for your novel. Sometimes choosing a title is really easy, and other times it can be the most difficult 3 words of your entire book. However, a title is really important. It gives readers a feel for your book and what they can expect from it, and there are many times where I've never heard of a book before, but I've decided to pick it up or at least look at it and see what it's about just because I thought the title was so interesting. So first of all, let's look at some qualities of a good title. Number 1, it suits the genre and tone. Some titles feel very distinctly one genre. They feel distinctly fantasy. They feel distinctly young adult. And although that's totally fine because it makes your book quite recognizable for what it is, you want to make sure you're not picking a title that feels like it's something else. If I was writing like a cute contemporary novel and I called it something very fantasy sounding, like what would be a really fantasy title? The King of Dragons. I would bet that there's probably a fantasy novel out there with that title. It would probably really confuse readers who would look at it and pick it up thinking that it was a fantasy novel when it was not in any respect. A lot of titles are very ambiguous. They don't point to one genre specifically, but some titles very clearly fit into the confines of one genre, especially because sometimes genres have kind of title trends. It's as easy as going to Goodreads and just going to the list of whatever genre you're writing in and studying what the trends are. Your book's title doesn't have to fit the trends, but I don't think it should fit the trends of another genre, because that could be quite misleading. You also want a title that's original and hasn't been used before. Titles aren't copyrighted, so you will find books that have the same title. However, I think it kind of depends on the title itself, whether or not it should ever be reused. If the title is something rather unobscure and quite obvious, you'll probably see it over and over. I saw an article once on the top 10 titles that short stories use, and number 1 was Home. If your title is something so common that it's being reused, maybe it's not that original and you should look elsewhere. I don't think it's a good idea to be reusing titles because it will make it harder for readers to find your book because search results will start conflicting with the other book with this title. A title should also be attention grabbing. Title and cover are 2 of your most immediate and important marketing tools. Eye-catching titles paired with eye-catching covers especially can draw in a reader who's never heard of your book before. I've picked up many books off of the shelf literally just because the title intrigued me. And finally, ideally, a good title gains meaning after the book is read. This isn't necessary, but I think it's a quality that many really strong titles have. It's interesting from the start, but then after the reader has read the book, they see a new meaning and purpose to the title. A lot of authors also like titles that have multiple relevant meanings within the story. So keeping those good qualities in mind, what are a few ways to craft a strong title? Number 1, be specific. As within prose itself, specificity is a great tool for crafting strong titles. Like I mentioned, the title Home isn't very strong. First of all, we've seen it over and over and over, and it's also very vague. I just turned around and looked at the shelf behind me to see what kind of titles there were, and I found Arcadia by Lauren Groff. Similarly to the weak title, which is Home, Arcadia is a single word title that expresses a place, but it's specific. It tells us what the place is, and for that reason, it's a much stronger title. A second strong quality is that a title is lyrical. When a title sounds really beautiful and kind of rolls off the tongue, almost like has a kind of a poetic quality, it can be really beautiful and kind of entrancing for someone who's never heard of it before. Again, I just looked to see if there was one that I thought fit this quality, and the book that I thought exemplified that quite well was The Nightingale Won't Let You Sleep by Stephen Heighton. I've never read this book, so I don't really know what it's about, but I think the title in itself is just so beautiful that I'm immediately intrigued. It sounds beautiful to say. Number 3 would be use of imagery. Oftentimes this is paired with a sense of lyricalness, but sometimes if a title conjures a really strong image, it can be also really engaging. The one that I thought did a good job of this on my shelf was Half of a Yellow Sun by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Immediately I have this image of a sun split in half in my mind, and again, before reading the book, I did not know what the significance of that would be within the novel, but I think it sounds really beautiful and it makes you see something. Another quality that can make an interesting title is the point of view. Now, not all stories will have like a distinct point of view, but I think it can be really interesting when you know where the title is coming from. One book that I thought did a good job of this was Do Not Say We Have Nothing by Madeline Tien. By including the word we in there, there's a sense of a person behind this title. Or because it's a we pronoun, a collective pronoun, we're kind of drawn into the title ourselves. You can also create an interesting title through the structure of the words. One book I think does this interestingly is Sing Unburied Sing by Jesmyn Ward. We've got punctuation within the title here, which is really interesting. It's a very interestingly structured title. Another one that did that, that's just one word, is Swamplandia by Karen Russell. So we actually have an exclamation point at the end of this title, which you don't see very often. And a final interesting quality that a good title can have is symbolism. In a way, all titles are symbols. It's a stand-in that's representing the entire novel. But oftentimes the title comes from a symbol in the novel. That's kind of the root of many, many titles. One of my favorite titles that I found on my shelf, which I think does more than just be symbolic, I think it's also got a beautiful image and it's very lyrical, is Sadness is a White Bird by Muriel Rothman-Zecker. I think this is a beautiful title. You kind of know it's going to be symbolic before you read it, but you don't necessarily know what the significance of that will be yet. When trying to craft a title, keeping all that in mind, here are a few techniques that I find helpful. Find a line that kind of exemplifies the ideas of the story, then kind of piece that line apart and put the important words into the strongest order in order to create a title. Some authors don't like title drops, so it might mean deleting the sentence itself if you're adverse to title drops, but it can be a really good way to create a very lyrical, beautiful title that has significance within the story. Second of all would be to do kind of a thought dump. When in doubt, this is usually what I do to create titles. I start by just writing down any word or phrase or image or really anything that I think is significant to my story. This could be names, places, symbols, ideas, images, pretty much anything. Once I have that, I try to identify the most important and interesting words and then try to somehow organize it into something that's a title. And then finally, identify the central idea or theme. Once you know that, try to express it through some sort of image or symbol or condense it into only a few words. I'm really interested to know what your favorite titles are. Some of mine would be Delicate Edible Birds by Lauren Groff. I think that that's a really beautiful title because it's so lyrical and it just sounds beautiful to say, but it also creates a really vivid image. And then another one I really like is Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. I really like this title because of the use of point of view. There's a lot of tension and conflict just in the title itself, and then I think the use of point of view is really interesting. The I and you kind of give it a sense of intimacy and emotion. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to subscribe for new videos every Tuesday and Friday. Until next time.